Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Goodsell, and I'm the director here at the Clinton Senior Center, and we're continuing with our Caregiver series. Today, our series is on helping our caregivers to de-stress. Being a caregiver can be very stressful, and we brought today our Tai Chi master is Jeff Cote. Jeff comes here on Tuesdays and instructs us in Tai Chi, and he also comes here on Wednesdays to help with meditation. So I'd like to introduce Jeff now, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his background and how he can help our caregivers to remain calm and to take care of themselves while they're taking care of others. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Deb. So as Deb said, my name is Jeff Cote. I've got an extensive background in Tai Chi, Qigong, Chinese medicine, and Taoism. I'm what's known as a Dao Shi, which is a Taoist priest, or a Taoist teacher, really. The translation means a teacher or guide of the Tao. I've been trained both at various temples and through lineage traditions, but also at universities and schools of Chinese medicine. And then through specific instructors such as Dr. Hua Zhelian, Dr. Feng Song, Tom Turcott, and Bill Helm have all been my Tai Chi and Qigong instructors. My primary Qigong instructor, however, was Dr. Zuko Shi, and he has his own Taoist lineage as well. So my background is steeped in both from the academic side of Oriental medicine, meditation, Qigong, from that side of it, but also from the spiritual side of its origins in China, in ancient China, in fact, through the Taoist lineages and the Taoist temples, such as Huashan Temple and Wudangshan. Coming from that perspective, you know, I'm myself am a healer. I treat clients and patients regularly, and I'm regularly having to give of myself in the same way that a caregiver gives of themselves, often in a very selfless way. And one of the things I've learned over the years, in addition to having been taught, but from my own personal experience of it, is that it's very easy to get run down. It's very easy for us to just kind of continue to give and give and give, and then kind of empty the tank. And then we find ourselves just not having enough left. And oftentimes when we face long-term care, we have to really plan it out in a very wise way. And that's probably the thing I learned the most from my elder teachers. You know, when I first began to study with Dr. Zuko Shi, he was in his early 80s and a very vital man, but he had a lot of wisdom to impart. And a lot of that wisdom came with some very, very clear instruction to me, was that, you know, if you're going to spend an hour in a day caring for another person, then you need to give yourself at least 5 to 10 minutes to care solely for yourself for that hour. If you're going to be caregiving for 2 hours, then it needs to be 10 to 20 minutes. And these are some very clear instructions that I took very seriously. Now, in our tradition, the way we care for ourselves is many-fold. One, we think about how we're going to nourish ourselves and nurture ourselves. Physiologically, you know, the easiest way to run yourself down is to literally don't put anything in your tank. You know, oftentimes we can be so busy caring for another person that we don't take the time for the most ordinary things, such as eating when we need it, right? Drinking the water that we need, because we're so focused on other people. Now, caregivers inherently tend to want to give. It's in their nature. People who are caregiving by nature are compassionate. And that means they want to give out to other people. But one of the things that I really got was that compassion starts with yourself too. When you can see yourself as your first patient that you care for, then you can make sure that what you have to give will be enough always for another person. So other ways that Dr. Shi specifically talked about in caring for yourself was to do things like taking breaks between having to do activities. Like if you have a number of activities you have to do for caregiving, take 5 minutes between each one of them to reset yourself. One of the things we become unaware of is in our effort to do something for another person, we can often start to use our bodies in an improper fashion. And these are simple things, but they're things that tend to fly below our radar. You know, people who are involved in doing something often tend to get these sorts of things. When they're doing, they tend to move forward. Their head goes forward, their body goes forward because they're active. They're ready to do something out here. But if you can look at my structure here, you can see that I'm literally holding my upper body weight up with my low back. What does that mean? Well, it means in the long term, these muscles that are designed to only direct weight through the body and onto the bones are now having to hold weight up, and they're having to hold it up long term. And that's exhausting. It's depleting to the vitality. It's pain-inducing, which, let's face it, whenever you're in pain, the more pain you have and the longer it goes on, the more it saps your own energy, the more it saps your will to continue to do things that need to be done. And it makes every task harder, right? So one of the things that he taught us to do was, in between any activity we're engaged in, stop and check your posture. Is your center underneath the center of your chest so your weight can come straight down? Can you relax your body? This is a fundamental element of the Taoist perspective in and of itself, and that is waste nothing. Waste no energy. If we're going to do something, if we do it efficiently, we preserve our own vitality. And that perspective starts to infuse the way we do things when we actually do it from the most ground level of our being, which is the body. When we start from, let's take and be relaxed in our action. If I'm going to go do something, rather than getting it done by trying to do it passionately from the chest and from the head, we relax and do it from the core of our being, so we can move and relax and move and do the thing and then go on to the next thing. This began as I started to do that practice of stopping for 5 minutes between activities, recentering my physical posture, taking a moment to recenter my mind and how I wanted to go about things. It caused me to do something else that was really valuable to me. And that was to take my goal orientation of getting a thing done and move it into process orientation. Now, one of the things about process orientation versus goal orientation is it changes the way we do the thing we're going to do. It also makes sure that we're doing it in a way that we want to be doing it from. You know, if we're caregiving, oftentimes the needs and the draw of having to give can be a pull at us. We can get impatient because we've got too many things to do. We can be rushed. We can be tense. We can be frustrated, right? And then later, everybody who experiences that, who's a caregiver, will say they're frustrated with themselves for having gotten to that place where that's not where they wanted to come from when they're doing the thing, doing whatever care they're giving, right? I know that's exactly how I feel. Every time I'm less than my best relaxed self, my less kind self, I get frustrated. And I get frustrated not with the other person, I get frustrated with me, which only makes my job of being a caregiver even harder, right? So this job of stopping just for a couple of minutes, recentering myself physically and recentering myself mentally about, okay, where am I coming from here? Where do I want to come from? What am I feeling? Taking those 5 minutes to acknowledge what you're feeling about where you are. Let it go. Let it flow through you. Okay? There's an interesting thing that we in the Tai Chi and Qigong community recognize that I don't know that everybody does. But emotions are energy. I mean, try being angry. If that doesn't get your energy up, try being sad. That's a different kind of energy. Oftentimes it's a subdual, but it's a change in state of energy, of mind and body. So when we feel anything, those feelings we have to have room for them, and we have to make room for them. If we don't make room for them, we're going to confine them, and we're going to squeeze them down on ourselves. And that's going to actually ramp up our internal energy, leaving us feeling more frustrated, more tired, and more bound up. Right? So taking that time, stopping, and just one breath and a sighing breath, right? If you try that anytime, even try it right now, just take a deep breath and sigh. Just you can feel how that creates like a downward release in your being. It's like a letting go. And that alone can be just a simple, quick tool that changes your state in the moment you're in, which then lets you decompress. The probably biggest danger that you face when you're having to give is that you're never getting a decompressed moment. You're doing, continue to tighten as you go from one thing to the next. And the energy of that do and care and all that just builds up, and it's bound up in you. And this is stress. You know, there's stress and there's stressors. Stressors you cannot change. Everyone's going to have them. But stress is what you do to yourself about the stressors and with the stressors or in response to the stressors, right? We want to mitigate that. There's always going to be some. You're a human being who's going to have feelings and resistances to things that come up in your day-to-day caring and your day-to-day doings of anything. But what we can do is change the way we respond to that stressor. Take the moment to acknowledge how you're feeling about it. Not wallow in it. That's not helpful, to just sit in being upset about something. That can get you stuck too. That's an equal kind of stuck. A different one, but equally damaging to your overall well-being. But making space for it, a space to let it process, flow through you, and move on, right? So imagine that. Imagine you've got a series of activities you have to do. You know, maybe help a person change, clean things up, a series of activities that take you half hour, 45 minutes. And then you've got to go on and do it again, or do something different. But that's going to be another half hour and 45 minutes, and you can block them up. But in between, you take those 5 minutes, and not only maybe do you stop and recenter, that's a quick one you can do between any 5-minute activity. You can just recenter and move on. But 5 minutes that you can take is now maybe stand and get in touch with releasing more gradually, and then doing progressive relaxation. Now there's a progressive relaxing standing practice that I do where I'll stand and I'll start at the top of my head, and I'll just sort of imagine like a letting go and a brushing happening here, and then I'll relax my face, relax my eyes, relax my mouth, relax my ears and the side of my neck, and I'll just work my way down, relax the shoulders. With each breath, and I'll do one breath for each relaxation, right? And if you just progressively do that through your whole body, you will be more relaxed than you can imagine. Matter of fact, you probably get about halfway and you'll want to feel like you want to sit down. That's okay too. That's also an acknowledgement of where you are in your energy. You know, balancing what we have to get done versus the rest we need is probably one of the biggest challenges almost anybody faces in life. But anytime we're caregiving, it almost doubles up, because now we got all our normal things that we would have to take care of. Ourselves, everyone else that we might do, all the day-to-day activities. And then we have these other activities we're engaged in as we care for someone else, right? Activities that are solely for them, right? They're somewhat for us too, because they help us connect to a person. And that's an important aspect of the caregiving that I've learned over the years of being a healer, is that, you know, while I might be giving a lot to a person in an activity or series of activities, I'm also getting something. And that is a deep connection with another human being. And I don't know that there's anything more restorative to our soul, at least, and certainly to our hearts, than knowing that we have a deep connection with somebody. And I think that oftentimes when we are in the process of caregiving, we can actually forget that. We can forget how important the connection we're forging here is, both to us and to them. Right? Often it's easy for us to see how important it is to them, but we can not recognize how important it is to us and not honor it And then by not honoring it, we don't let ourselves receive back through it. And there's a funny thing about people that tend towards caregiving. I've noticed over the years, and I'm certainly guilty myself, is we can often be the people who want somebody to care for us the most, but make it the hardest for others to do it. We tend to hold, because we want to be the caregiver, right? That can be a very common trait. And I recognize it in all the caregivers I know. My wife is like that, I'm like that. My teachers were all like that to a large extent. At the same time, like Dr. Shu, he recognized that quality in himself, and he talked with me about it in the same way I'm talking with you now. Recognizing the ways in which we block others giving back to us or giving to us when we have a lot to give out is a way that we stop ourselves from getting what we actually might need that will actually help us be even better caregivers, more of what we most want to do or be, or need to do or be, even if it's not what we want, right? Allowing the space for somebody to give to you what you need is important. And oftentimes it hits you in a level you're not necessarily overtly aware of, but instead it helps you to feel supported in your support. And that has a secondary effect that's really powerful in that it creates a network of connection. And one of the things I fell in love with about the philosophy of Taoism was this idea that we are in an interconnected web, that all of life is in an interconnected web. Nothing is an island. Nothing is isolated. Everything we do affects and influences everyone and everything else. And when we participate in that way, this open exchange, we allow people to give to us as we give to others. What ends up happening is we start to recognize that, and we learn to draw on it. It changes perspective. Probably the most powerful thing I learned about being a healer, about being a caregiver, was how to be supported by the world around me and not feel like I have to do it all on my own. That is the thing that will wear you down and wear you out faster than anything else. I don't know anyone who likes to feel alone. I know people who like to be alone for a time. I like some solitude. I spent time in a temple. I'm monkish by nature. I love to just go off and be alone and quiet. But I also equally love the support and interaction with other people. And we oftentimes, when we are caregivers, sometimes we are that connection for other people. And if we're not connected to a bunch of other people where the resources of vibrant, vital energies, of emotional energy, support, love, care, can come to us, we can't be a great conduit. Because if we're the only one that they are able to interact with a lot, or we're the primary interaction that they have with other people, then we're not a clear conduit because we're not letting it come through. In the course of my various teaching, I happened to meet a Native American medicine person, and he wanted to learn some Chinese medicine, and I wanted to learn a little bit about his perspective, and we did a lot of sharing. And he had this perspective about being a healer and a caregiver for people. He used to say that you strive to become a hollow bone, and so that's like you're a conduit for a healing force and a life force to come through you. And it's very similar. We have a similar idea in the Taoist perspective in Tai Chi, where we try to empty ourselves so that the life force can flow through us more freely. Okay, similar idea. But that expression of being a hollow bone, I really liked it. It's this idea that we've got two ends and it flows both ways. And when we really empty ourselves of holding, of resistance to what's flowing for us in both directions, when people want to give and when we need to give, then we allow a clearer, more powerful energy to come through, and most importantly, we actually get fed by it. You know, your bones are kind of hollow. There's marrow in the middle, but it's very porous, right? And the marrow is actually nourishment. It creates blood cells. In the Chinese model of healing and health, the marrow is the Jing essence of the body. It's the root vitality of which your life force is made, right? That's how they see it. So this idea of that central bone, the center of that, being this storehouse of vitality that life force flows through, is a great image for me. And I think that when we approach our care with the idea that we're going to allow that, our caregiving can actually revitalize us rather than only sap our strengths. Okay? Again, we talked at the beginning about making sure we made time for ourselves. Well, what are some of the other activities that I learned? Well, various Qigong activities. There's a wonderful Qigong, actually, I want to share with you guys, simply because it's very simple to do. You don't need to know a lot about all the structural details or anything like that to do it. It's just a wonderful, simple Qigong that can help preserve your own mental space. You know, have you ever been around people whose emotions are so strong that it's hard to kind of ignore them, and you almost feel them yourselves? It feels like oftentimes when you're close to somebody anyways and they have strong feelings, it raises strong feelings in you in response, right? Everybody experiences that. For example, somebody you love and care about, you're in a conversation and they're frustrated and angry. They might not even be frustrated and angry with you, they're just frustrated and angry. But you find yourself getting angry, right? That's a porousness that we have in our energy, the Chinese, in our qi. Our minds and bodies are so intimately connected that we literally feel the energy they emit, and it starts to influence our energy. Now the mind level also gets hooked on it, and there's all sorts of layers of it. But this Qigong that I'm going to share with you helps you create what they call Wei Qi, which is the external boundary qi of your body and your being. But it works on all levels. You know, the Chinese have we believe we're multi-layered. You know, we're bodies, we're minds, and we're spirits. And the spiritual aspect of us is a combination of mind, consciousness, and soul. It's all this amalgamation of non-physical stuff, but it's as important and as formative to the body as the body is to the mind. You know, and so when we work with this qi and we create this stronger Wei Qi, this stronger defensive energy, it helps to protect us from that inundation of overwhelm that we can get from a lot happening. And let's face it, when we're caring for somebody, oftentimes we're seeing them in their worst emotional states, their own frustrations, their own difficulties, their own challenges. And it can really batter at us on an emotional level. Right? And so this helps to do that, but it also protects the body from the stress of it. And that's one of the benefits of it. So the simple instruction of this is, you know, all Qigongs have what they call 3 regulations. There's the regulation of the breath, the regulation of the body, and the regulation of the mind. Right? Each Qigong is defined by how it regulates each of those things. Okay, now, in this particular one, the regulation of the body, I'm going to say, very simple instruction. Upright and relaxed. You can be seated, you can be standing, you could even be semi-reclining. As long as you can be, as you know, your spine is aligned and relaxed, and you're generally mostly upright. Suppose you could probably do it laying down, but I probably wouldn't. Mostly just because you feel stronger when you're upright in some way. That's the simple basic instruction of the body regulation. The breath regulation here, you're going to coordinate breathing in and out with your movements. And I'll explain the specifics of that in a moment as we get to the movements. Okay? The mind regulation is you're going to let your awareness, and you're going to direct your awareness through your body with a sort of feeling image. Now, what do I mean by feeling image? Well, everybody's heard of visualization, right? Visualize, you know, I can visualize being surrounded by a bubble. And that's something that's occurring only in my mind when I visualize. But a feeling image is one where I'm trying to carry it into the body, where I'm trying to create the felt experience of what I'm imagining, what I'm visualizing. So there's a flow. We're going to hearken back to the hollow bone here. I want to imagine I'm a column, because I'm essentially a column here. My body's a general column that's hollow. And there are different forces, different life forces that can flow through me. Air is a life force that flows through me, right? Gravity, it's associated with the life on this planet. It flows through me, right? So there's various forces that can flow through me. In this particular case, my own awareness is a life force because it's associated with my life, right? And I'm going to let it flow through me, through the core of my being, at the deepest level, in the deep center line of my being, as I inhale. And then as I exhale, I'm going to let it emanate out and around. And I'm going to let my awareness come around. I'm going to imagine, what does it feel like out here? If there were actually something flowing through me, that were flowing up, out, and around, what would that feel like? Right? And as I move, I'm going to create that feeling. Now, not only am I trying to get this feeling of it flowing up and around, but also from that deep center line, expanding out into the sphere at the same time. So it's flowing through and expanding out into that. Now, here's where it all comes together. The body mechanic, meaning the movement, the breath, and the feeling image that I'm creating all have to time together. Timing is the secret to getting it to all come together. You'll feel it more if you're moving in time with what you're picturing, because your physical body is actually feeling your movement. So it helps to create the felt experience of that expanding sphere. So what I'll usually do is sink into my legs a little, or if I'm seated, I'll really let my awareness anchor down in the lower abdomen. Then as I inhale, I want to imagine as if I'm drawing the energy of the earth right up through me. And it's expanding out through me at the same time. And then as I exhale, I let it flow around. And I let my awareness move around, and like I'm brushing it with my fingertips. That starts to create the felt experience. Now, that's the first half of it. The second half is to go the other way. Not only do I generate a field, and we all do actually. If you look into the science behind neurophysiology and everything, there's a woman by the name of Dr. Valerie Hunt, who is a neurophysiologist at Berkeley. And she studied how the body actually generates a magnetic field, an electromagnetic field. And at first they used to think it was solely by the central nervous system was what did that. And she discovered it wasn't. It's actually the fascia. The fascia is all the membranes that surround the muscles. And they have like an electrolytic fluid in it that carries the signal from the nervous system and generates the field. Now, here's the most important and interesting aspect of that. She discovered that unlike what we used to think, that this brain was what controlled the body, she discovered that the field actually controls the body, and the field will move and change before even the brain does. It's responsive. And so she created a hypothesis that the mind, not the brain, the mind was the field of our body that we generated, which is absolutely fascinating, especially in light of things like when somebody has an amputation and they can still feel the hand, and their mind still tells them that there is a hand. And that's, I believe, because they're still generating the field of it, because it's part of their mind. They still, until over time, it slowly begins to morph and change as their idea and their mind, their sense of self begins to change from having it over time. Very fascinating stuff. But anyways, so keeping that in mind, we're actually working with something that is shown to be real here. This isn't just our imagination. if we're working with it and we're actively generating that field, here's another wonderful side effect if we're doing that as a sphere. A sphere is always whole. It's always balanced. A sphere can't not be balanced. Now, if you're generating this with your mind and you're telling your nervous system to generate that as a sphere, you're telling your nervous system to tell every cell in your body to be whole and complete, balanced and coordinated, connected. That's a pretty good signal to send your body, and it's restorative by nature. Okay? So, the other half. I know I can ramble here and there. It's how I do these. And I'm sorry if I'm hard to follow. But I do always circle back. That's the nature of Tai Chi. We walk a big circle, and we come back to it. We might pass over something quick, and then we come back to it. So I'm going to come back to this, the second half of this Qigong. The second half of this Qigong is about receiving from around you, right? We generate this field. It's protective, but it's also interactive. We don't want to close ourselves off from the world. What we want to do is have a strong field that says everything in here is in harmony. That is inherently restorative to us when we create internal harmony. Think about the moments in your life when you felt the most at peace and the most harmony in your life. Felt pretty good, right? I can recall very specific moments that were incredibly harmonious. And they're always very fulfilling, right? And I strive for that. I strive to create that and recreate it all the time. And what I will say about that is that in general, when we do that, we maintain a much stronger, more vital life essence for ourselves and are able to carry that into our work of giving care. So the second half is the exchange side where we receive back in, right? So after I've inhaled and expanded outward, the next I want to do is I want to feel the air around me. Do you know your skin breathes? Your skin breathes, and it's as important to your life functioning as your lung breathing. I remember when I was younger, there was it was a shock. I remember reading about this guy who had covered himself in latex paint. He was just doing it as he didn't realize it was dangerous. Covered his whole body, head to toe, in latex paint, and he suffocated because his skin couldn't breathe. And it was just this article I happened to read about something, and I was pretty young, I was like 11 or 12, and I was like, what? How did that happen? I didn't know that could happen, right? Well, it's true. Your skin needs to breathe, and it breathes deeply. Now, how often are we aware of that? Almost not at all. Unless we give it some attention, we won't even be aware of it. But here's a Qigong where we're actually learning to body breathe. And that's an essential part of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out with my whole body. Imagine that your whole body can just reach out a little bit. And as you inhale, it can receive. And I'm going to just follow that towards the center of the bones, and then towards the center of the body as I inhale. So I reach out, and it's almost like that sphere is moving in and through me again. But this time moving into the center line and down. And then as I exhale, it's flowing back down and the other way, back up to the circle, right? Here's a funny thing. In Chinese medicine, we have meridians that flow in a particular sequence. And the ones that come up from the legs flow on the inside, up, and they slowly move outward. And the ones on the outside and the top move in and down. Just like this Qigong I'm describing. It's very interesting. Now, another interesting component to it, the Chinese have a viewpoint of yin and yang, Okay? And this really, they believe that things are comprised of two polarities of energy, right? They're not separate. They're not separate things. Yin cannot exist without yang. It's like trying to have a back without a front, right? Or light without darkness, or darkness without light. There's nothing to compare it to. They are complementary, apparent opposites that transform into each other just like day and night do, right? Daytime slowly turns into night, nighttime slowly turns into day. Winter becomes summer, which becomes winter again. It's the same idea. These are the same basic principles. Now, in the Chinese perspective, what is below and consolidated is yin. What is above and expanded and expansive and less substantive is yang. Those are two polarities, right? So you can see in this, we're moving from a yin to a yang, and then from a yang to a yin, and they exchange. I'm going to bring your image back to the hollow bone for a second as the energies move in both directions. Right? Freedom of exchange. As we become aware of the exchange of energies, we become wiser in our management of the exchange of energies, more balanced. That way we preserve our own vitality and energy and our own well-being enough to continue to offer what we do. Right? So if we put this all together with these movements, we get this idea of gathering the chi from below, allowing that yin energy of the earth to come up through me, spread out and become the spherical field of the space of the space I occupy as I exhale. And then I use that energy to reach out and receive, allowing that vital energy to come in and move in and revitalize me, revitalize my body, and release what I don't need back to the earth. There's wonderful lessons in this. There's all these subtle hidden lessons that I love that are metaphorical in this kind of a practice. You know, it's good to allow things to move through you. Don't resist what arises and you reduce stress, right? Instead, allow it to come in, but also allow it to transform. Get rid of what you don't need. Let go of it. Take in what you do. If you're just kind of going through those ideas, let me take in what I need. Fill myself with vitality, particularly if that's your intention and you're going to gather that. When you think about it, where does all of the life force come from? The life energy itself, the ability to live like on this planet, comes from the earth itself. We get our food from it, we get our water from it, right? Even the air we breathe is because the earth creates a field that holds it in and generates it through all the transformations between the trees. And there's another one, by the way, another wonderful exchange, another example of interdependence. We breathe out what trees need breathe out what we need. By the way, you want to ramp this Qigong up, do it right in front of a tree. Seriously, anytime you do any Qigong in front of a tree, you're getting more fresh oxygen right from the tree. And you're giving it more of what it needs. And there's an interchange there. Interestingly, they've done a lot of studies now about the electromagnetism, what they call the electromagnetic field, but also there's what's known as the morphogenetic field of the forest itself, which is the interconnection of all the trees and how they have a combined sort of neurological system. Some wonderful studies being done about that, and how just going into that is healing to us. Japan has this tradition of forest bathing, they call it. That's what it translates to, forest bathing. And it doesn't mean you get naked in the forest. If you're into that, go ahead, but just be careful. There's a lot of mosquitoes and ticks and weirdos. What they mean, though, is going in and bathing yourself in the forest and just immersing yourself deeply into it, going far enough into it that that's what you get. The energy of it is all around you. And there's a lot of studies that have been done about how stress reducing that is. You don't even need to do anything else. You don't even need to walk. You don't have to take a walk in it, or you get out there. Just being in the forest for a period of time releases endorphins, right? It reduces stress hormones. It balances the system. People's blood pressure drop. They've done study after study that show this. This is another wonderful way. One of the things that I've done before when I've only had 5 minutes is, and I wasn't in a mind space to focus on Qigong, I've gone and sat in my garden. I just go out and sit down in my garden. I look at the birds, watch the butterflies. But what's important is you're taking that 5 minutes for yourself. Vitally, vitally, vitally important to continued well-being when you're going to give out your energy to other people. Right? So this Qigong, again, one more time. It's very simple. If you guys feel like you want to join me, do it with me now. You can do it seated. Here, I'll show you. I'll do it seated. Let me use this chair. That way, if somebody doesn't feel like they want to or can stand for a little bit, they need a little break. The big thing for me is I try not to slouch. All right? If I do this, I tend to sit in the front part of the chair, but I've learned to have a very strong core. Sometimes if your core is tired or you've been really tired, I won't do that sometimes. Sometimes if I go back, what I'll do is I'll sit all the way back so that I can be upright. So my low back is supporting me right against the thing, and I can still be upright but relax my back. Right? But once you have that, I'm going to sit in the front. This is a really deep chair. Well, you can get lost in it. So I sit here, same thing. I put my feet flat on the ground so I can feel the ground. I like to have my shoes off, but some people don't like to do that. It can be a real pain to take them off if you've already got them on. But once I feel the ground and I feel my center and my center line, and I just start and I just inhale and just imagine that coming up as I breathe, like I'm breathing from below to up. Notice I'm not lifting my chest. I'm not breathing only into my chest. Just relax again. I'm not breathing in my chest here. I want to breathe down here into my lower abdomen. I want to breathe as deeply. At the same time, don't create tension to make that happen. Just breathe as deeply as you can without conflict. If you feel internal tension, you're pushing too hard to try to make your breath go down. Instead, let it go down to where the tension is. And on your exhale, let go of the tension as you go. And you'll use your breath to let go of that. So we inhale. And exhale. And I just imagine that sphere, like a golden sphere of light. Or, just imagine it's moving and try to feel a movement of the energy and a movement of my mind. And then, from the outer surface of my body, I outreach and I receive, like I'm inhaling with my arms, inhaling with my skin, inhaling with my whole body. Just now, if I'm doing this as a Qigong, I'll go back and forth. So I would go back up and out again, and then back in and down again. And just going back and forth over and over, letting the Qi move in, letting it move out. Letting it move in, letting it move out. Let it come in from below, expand out above. Come in from above, expand down below. So we get the exchange of yin and yang. We're sending the signal of whole and balanced and complete. And it's very simple. You visualize, and some people can't visualize very well. Focus on the feeling of the movement, of the sphere of your arm movement. Right? Let that be the predominant feeling. I wasn't very good at visualizing when I first started. I couldn't make visual images in my head very well. Not clear, not consistent. It would jump all over to stuff and my mind would go all over the place. So I focused on the visceral sensation of my body expanding out and coming back in, and that really anchored it for me. Everybody's different. Some people are more kinesthetic, so the feeling sense is far better for them. Some people are more visual, and the visual imagery is going to be far more important to you. Some people are auditory. Make the breath. Really pay attention to the sound of the breath coming in. Hear it come in, hear it go out. Let that immerse you into the feeling of receive and release, right? One final element that's so important about this, about Qigong and the breath component of it, is your breath, the Chinese refer to as the big exchange. They call it the big exchange with life, the big exchange with the Tao, with all else. It is the one way you're actually interacting with everybody on the planet. Every being that is alive on the planet, you're exchanging something with. The molecules you're breathing in could have been in China 3 months ago. They could have come from a panda. They could have come off of a Bodhi tree. When you consider that, your breath is literally, it could have come from a star. In fact, at one point it did, right? Every molecule we breathe is a piece of the universe coming in. And every molecule we breathe out is a piece of us we're giving back to the universe. That's a pretty awesome exchange when you think about it. But we don't think about it. And that's probably the one really valuable thing that taking 5 minutes to do helps us with. It helps us to remember we are not alone in what we're doing. We have a network of support, even if it's invisible. We can lean on something other than ourselves, even if that leaning on is to go out and take in the fresh air that a tree gives us, or the peace of mind that watching a bird sing gives us, or the beauty of a flower, or the touch of a friend, right? How many people that are caregivers are so aware of how their touch is so beneficial to the person they're caregiving for, but aren't really aware of how important somebody touching us is to us. That's vital. Leaving yourself open to that is probably the biggest key. And the most beautiful thing I learned from Taoism was that sense of exchange. That I'm not alone, that I'm exchanging with other people and other beings, life force. And if I do so consciously, I get more energy out of it. And those little 5 minutes that I take on regular intervals are the things that help me remember that. Remember moment by moment. Oftentimes the thing that really wears people out isn't a thing. It's a feeling. It's a perspective. It's an attitude. If you feel like you're alone, if you feel like there's too much for you to do and you don't have enough energy, you're going to burn out. That is the definition of burnout, right? But when you are constantly reaffirming life support all around you, and you're taking it in, you're sending a signal to your body, and to your mind, the deeper aspects of your consciousness, that you're not alone, that you have unlimited life force around you to draw on. And it leaves you open to learning how to see where it's coming from, because you're looking for it. And that is really valuable, because then all of a sudden you're going to see that person who wants to reach out and take you to lunch, or just pat your shoulder, or just share a laugh or a joke with you, or give you the smile that you need today. You'll be able to take that in here, where it makes the biggest change and the most important one. Right? Does anybody have any questions before I wrap up? No? Okay. Thank you all very much for listening to me ramble. Go ahead.
When you're sitting in your balance, what do you feel about people crossing their legs or their ankles? Is that good for you or bad for you, or doesn't it make a difference?
I can't say it's bad for you. I certainly do it myself at times. I would say that if I'm meditating or something, I won't do it simply because I want balance between the two legs, and this is not, I'm not off balance, but they're not the same. The energy between them isn't the same. Okay? At the same time, I have, on occasion, I will do things like this, and I'll actively use this to stretch my hip. I'll just put a little weight in my arm, and I'll sit here, and it's comfortable, but I'm also stretching out some tension that's here, and that can be very helpful. Especially if my back or legs or hips are tired, having just that little bit of stretch when I sit and relax, You know, I tell people, be relaxed. Whatever that is for you, be relaxed. That's the greatest teaching I ever got in all Tai Chi, Qigong, all that. Dr. Hua used to say to me all the time, do less. Don't work so hard. Learn to do without doing. Be effortless. Think about that. If you could do everything that you needed to do in a day and it was effortless, how would that feel?
Great.
It would feel amazing, right? Who wouldn't want to live that way? Here's the thing. You can't get there if you're not trying to be there. Right? You're not going to get there. That's not going to happen spontaneously. So when he said, learn to be effortless, I was like, okay, how? And it made me analyze the way I went about things. And one of the big things it taught me was how much unnecessary tension I generated. For no reason whatsoever other than habit. Because I was culturally taught that this thing should be frustrating or I should fight against this thing that happened. And it was like, wait a minute, that's not helpful. But instead, when you take a different perspective, all of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't have to make this hard. I can make this as easy as it can be. Some things are going to be difficult either way. There's going to be challenges in it. But one of the things I learned from that was don't add to that. Don't add any stress or tension that doesn't need to be there. Right? All of a sudden, it's easier.
So it's important to take time, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Important to take that 5 minutes.
Yeah, like I said, Dr. Shu said to me, for every hour, 5 minutes. For every hour. And, you know, that means if you're 8-hour day, you should spend at least 40 minutes. 5 in between each one. But he also, you know, in our traditions, I was taught to practice some of these things on my own, aside from those 5 minutes, just to set aside half hour, or 45 minutes, hour, or 2 hours sometimes, just to practice various things. Now, I'm pretty intense about this stuff. I teach Tai Chi, I teach Qigong, so my skill level of it has to be very, very high. And I enjoy it. It's not, believe me, it's not arduous for me to engage in 4 hours of Tai Chi. I think it's wonderful. In fact, I wish I could do it every day. In fact, most days I do. Not always contiguous hours, but so it's not really labor because I love it. It would be like laboring in your favorite hobby. It's not really labor, is it? It's enjoyment. So one part of my trajectory was do what you love. My teachers taught me, do what you love. And so I love this, and so I do. That's what I decided to do. But most important is if I was going to set aside a time and protect it. Like if I have a practice time, which I do every day, I protect that time. Not rabidly. If something happens that is completely outside my control and that time has to go towards something else, then I accept that. But if it doesn't have to go to it, then I say, okay, I will take care of that when I'm done with my practice. I'm going to do this right now. Because that was making sure my well was primed. I primed the well before I started pouring water out of it. Otherwise, you don't prime it, it runs dry fast, right?
True.
So that's the key, is that take that time for you, and you will have more for other people. That's probably the most important part that I can offer. And I know it seems self-evident, and it's, you know, you've probably heard it in 1,000 different ways, but you'd be surprised how easy it can be if you just take 5 minutes between things to just replenish, just for a little. If you can't do 5, do 2, then do 2 between something else, 2 or 3. I know, sometimes things can be really hectic, right? But at the same time, one of the things I learned years ago was I could do anything for 5 minutes. I could make 5 minutes a window of time in the middle of anything. And that means sometimes somebody has to hold on for 5 minutes while I do this other thing for me, right? Sometimes some people might say that that's selfish, but that 5 minutes makes sure I have another hour of giving I have in me. If I don't do it, I've only got maybe 20 minutes before I lose it. And that 20 minutes is going to be lower quality than if I do the 5. And so I do. I build that into my practice. So between all of my patients, I always have at least a 5-minute window. usually closer to 10 to 15, but always at least a 5-minute window between where I can do something for myself. Make sure, recenter, make sure I'm clear and I'm not carrying with me anything from the previous activity that was maybe frustrating or rewarding even, or I'm, still attached to something else and I'm not really here for this thing. Presence of being is a part of that, and it brings you back into that presence of being. We all do things better when we're fully present with whatever we're doing. We all do. I don't care who we are, right? We bring more of ourselves to it. We end up, what one of my teachers used to say, we lend the force of our being to the activity and bring it, and thereby bring it alive. Right? And now that's living artfully, and that's always rewarding. All right, well, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Jeff, for coming for the talk. Any more questions? No? Well, Jeff, thanks a lot.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Great. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Be well.